What's going on, Spirit Battlers? This is the intro. I'm Ryan F. Miles, and I play Purple. I'm here to talk about Purple cards because I want to. Why are you going to listen to me? Because you're here. All right, first up, we got the Nexuses, starting with Dark Grail. We're going to be sorting these cards into a Reasons to Play Purple tier, which is your Reasons to Play Purple. Your Very Good tier. These cards are very good. Your Playable tier. Do you get the theme? Do you see where we're going with this? Niche cards and then bad cards. They're pretty self-explanatory. I think we'll kind of delve into their meaning as we go through. But starting off with Dark Grail, this card, when placed, removes a core from one of your opponent's spirits that has 2 or more cores, so it's never killing anything when placed. And then it's also, if you put 3 cores on it, which is a lot, you draw a card when one of your purple spirits is destroyed during your attack step. So it functions as a worse Rotting Swamp. It costs at least 2 cores to play. It doesn't have any more reduction than that, and it doesn't kill anything. This card, starting off our list, goes into the bad tier. I hope it doesn't need too much explanation. But yeah, it's just worse Rotting Swamp, and it costs 2. So if it costs less, maybe we could talk about it, but we can't. So next up, we've got, I couldn't even see it for a second, Ancient Amethyst Palace. This card, it can kill something when placed. It discards the top card of your deck if it's not a spirit, removes a core. So if your opponent has a thing with 1 core and you don't mill a spirit, you can kill something. And then during your turn, you can remove more cores from your opponent's things as things die. This is, only going to summarize cards that you shouldn't already know, and this card has seen no play, so you shouldn't already know it. But I don't hate it, and the reason I don't hate it, it is really bad. Like, don't get me wrong, the effects on this card are not relevant most of the time. Would be very, very niche, but the thing that this card has going for it is that it costs 1 to play when you've got the 2 reduction, and I've kind of thought to myself sometimes in the purple deck where I draw a bunch of cards off of stuff like Netherworld Depths and Black Lance and Purple Smoke Valley, and like Cavalier. You know, you just draw a lot of cards, and sometimes you have like 10 cards in hand, but like you're constantly like wiping boards, like especially in Purple Mirrors where you're like Bishop Curse Dragon, they're like Bishop Curse Dragon. Not having your Nexuses stick around can be annoying, and Depths has a target on it, so having a Nexus that costs 1 with full reduction and like just kind of stays in the field, your opponent never wants to Burning Force this. It's caught my eye, and I've tried it, and it wasn't the worst one of I've ever played. So I'm actually putting this in the niche tier, and that's the most I'll talk about on Nexus. Next up is Purple Smoke Valley, I believe. Yep. Purple Smoke Valley is the quintessential core control Nexus. When you kill something with core control effects, you draw a card, and then it has a little cool upside of your opponents can't block curse units when they only have 1 core on them, or your opponent's units with 1 core can't block your curse units. This is a very good card. I'm not going to put it in the Reasons to Play Purple. You'll find out what cards go in there later, but this is just the purple Nexus when your archetype is leaning into core control. And then on the flip side, we've got our Rotting Swamp. This is your purple aggro kind of tool. You draw a card when your spirits are destroyed while attacking, and then it has the upside of level 2 where you can constantly recycle Serpents, which has gotten a big buff with Black Lance being released and being a Serpent. That's kind of the best thing to recur, but it's still a very, very fringe ability. The main reason you play this card is for the first part in an aggressive curse, or even just any aggressive style deck for purple. Even some of the mid-range strategies we've seen play it, like the deck that won EU and some of the lists over there. The 2-pip reduction matters a lot, whereas the Purple Smoke Valley only has 1 reduction, but then again, that is a slower deck. Rotting Swamp is just a very good card when you're doing that sort of thing with the deck. Next up, we've got Abandoned Guillotine. This card's very interesting. The level 1 is all your Shadow Spirits gain 2,000, and then for just a measly 1 core, if none of your opponent's spirits are exhausted, so if they don't attack you, you can strip one of your opponent's spirits down to 1. Now this is very interesting. The first part is largely not what I care about this card. It is good. There are synergies with it. Those decks are not really on the tier 1 material where purple has a chance to shine, but it does have use there. The main thing here is that it's only a 1 core investment for the level 2, and a lot of the purple core control payoffs, the best ones specifically, occur when your opponent has an exhausted unit or exhausted spirit. So stuff like Beldegor, stuff like Mordred, those are like the big 2 that come to mind. Core Drain also. Your opponent has to want to attack you, and sometimes like they're not incentivized. They don't want to ramp you into Cursed Dragon. So with this being like a turn 1 Nexus, you're constantly powering down your opponent's units to 1 core, or you are making them attack you and then turning on your Core Drain, your Mordred, your Beldegor. So this card hasn't seen much play. It is I think, a very, very good one of, maybe even a two of in some decks. And the Shadows part on the level 1 is obviously not irrelevant, just not the part of this card that I usually get the most excited about with the tier 1 purple decks. So I'm not going to put this in the same tier as the very good. I think it's no Rotting Swamp, it's no Smoke Valley, it's no Card Advantage Engine, but it is an enabler. And even if your opponent doesn't play into it and they don't attack you and enable your Mordred, your Cordring, your Beldegor, they are now enabling your Curse Dragon. You're stripping something to one core, so it's your Curse Dragon, your Spider Demon, your Mimira, that kind of stuff. Your Core Theft gets cheaper. Definitely a playable card, not something to sleep on. Just hasn't really found a home. There's just almost too many good purple cards, but it might see more play later when the Shadows part of the text becomes more relevant. Next up, we've got Netherworld Depths, and if you don't know what Netherworld Depths is, you haven't been playing Battle Spirits. This says draw a card when your opponent's spirits is exhausted. That means when they attack, when they block. Next set, when we put green cards in our deck. It's a very exciting level 1, and this card costs 6, but the 3 pip reduction comes up very often. This is not a super expensive card to play most of the time. And then the level 2 part of this is the most relevant level 2 on any of the Nexuses also. It effectively gives your guys Curse. It helps you deal with anything that white is doing outside of exactly Elk and now Axe Spider. It lets your guys kill Enterprise. It lets you swing under Elephant and then choose not to kill Elephant because it's an optional curse, but you're still able to kill all of your opponent's blockers. That part matters a lot in the white matchup. Kills just everything, obviously. That's what the card says. Level 2, very relevant. Level 1 is the reason we play it. This is the reason to play purple. So those are the Nexuses. Definitely Netherworld Depths is the absolute behemoth. And then you've got some fringe stuff that we haven't seen played in events yet, and then you don't play Dark Grail. So that's the Nexuses. I think that's all of them. We're going to close this tab. Next time we're moving to the Magics. Are they called Magics in this game? Magics. First up, in no particular order, we have Core Drain. Core Drain is, again, that your opponent's stuff is exhausted. You can remove up to 3 cores, which a vast majority of the time says kill target exhausted spirit. And then it also has the flash of gaining 2000 BP, which does come up, especially if you're in Maduke decks. Being able to pump one of your opponent's spirits and give it 2000 BP so that your own Maduke dies in combat. And the real kicker here, for the real best part of this card, is that it's got the 2 pip reduction. It's a 3 that goes down to a 1 cost. That part is absolutely insane. This is it's almost a reason to play purple, but it is actually just very, very good. This tier is exclusive, and Core Drain doesn't quite hit that mark, but again, that 1 cost just is super good. Very efficient removal, one of the best removal spells in the game, but it's not something you splash in other colors because it's not something you actually want to pay 3 for. But when you're paying 1 for it, this card is insane, so it's very, very good. Next up is Deadly Balance. Now that I'm into this video, I really should have thought about where all these cards are going. I am just doing them on the fly, and I might regret where I put some cards. But Deadly Balance, you select one of your opponent's spirits, and you select one of yours. If you don't control a spirit, you can still play this card. That's a huge upside, and it just says you kill both spirits. So it's again, 3 cost, 2 pip reduction. So usually you're only paying 1 core for it, and you're just killing one of your opponent's spirits. Whether you're playing the slow version of purple, the core control style, it's very easy to end up with 0 creatures on your board, 0 spirits. I'm going to try 0 spirits on your board, and you're not killing anything. It's just a straight 1-for-1. We love that. If you are playing a go wide strategy, this card is still very good because you can attack with your weaker units first, or your stronger units first, and then kill your opponent's blockers, and then have those tapped units available to kill later with your own Deadly Balance to clear out more of their blockers. It's very favorable in combat. Beldegor and killing your own 4 costs is one of the absolute most important reasons to play this card. Being able to trigger your own Immortal is phenomenal. There's cool things you can do with Deadly Balance in other colors, like with the yellow Alice. You can ramp a core while also not killing one of your guys. This card is just so flexible, so powerful. It is something that I would say is actually a reason to play purple. It is the, in my opinion, best removal spell in the game, because when this only costs 1, and it's specifically in tandem with, I think, Beldegor tricks. Spoiler alert, Beldegor is going to end up in this tier as well. And then even if you're a hybrid purple deck, you're playing Beldegor in a yellow deck, or Beldegor in a white deck, or even in a red deck, as we saw with the second place list from Chile, you play 4-cost stuff, and like Deadly Balance can be very, very good there. Obviously, the list from Chile in this example didn't play Deadly Balance, but I honestly think it could have. So I'm going to put this in the reason play purple. It is the premium removal spell in Battle Spirits, in my opinion. So moving on to the next card, we've got Dark Matter. Dark Matter is a really cool card, something I've played a little bit with, specifically before Vegas. The burst when you lose life is a little bit awkward, because when you lose life, you usually want to Ice Shield, and usually in purple, whether you're playing when you're playing the aggressive style of purple, Ice Shield becomes the most important burst set, because you want to swing and then not die in the crackback. If you're tapping all of your guys to hit your opponent, you become very vulnerable to dying on the crackback. So Dark Matter doesn't keep you alive like Ice Shield does. Ice Shield becomes the most important card to set as a burst. And then in the purple control decks, you really want to take damage early. You want to get yourself ramping, and that's usually before you have cards in your graveyard to be able to get back with this burst effect. So it's a little bit awkward. I think this card has the potential to do a lot, but it's never really been an overperformer for me like I really thought it would. I've even messed around with this in like purple-white hybrids, where I could have unlimited Axe Spiders and keep getting Axe Spiders back with this card if they ever died. The problem was I never did, so it kind of became a moot point. And another thing to note is like the 4 costs, like getting your 4 costs back matters, because that gets you more Beldegors, so it's kind of its own value engine. Again, the red decks can kind of do Blazing Board Beldegor loops, and Dark Matter almost wants to be there, but it never really realized that potential. It's just a little bit too niche, but it's not completely unplayable. So the Dark Matter goes in the niche tier, and I could even see this card getting better if we get more potent, impactful 4 or less units that we really care about, and like the recursion does matter. But it's just not there right now. It's not super important for us to be playing Dark Matter, but there are like some fringe decks that might want it. Next up, we got Core Theft. Core Theft. If you don't know what Core Theft does, you select an opponent's spirit, you discard any number of cards, and then that many cards, however many cards you discarded, you remove that many cores from the spirit, and you don't just place them into the reserve like almost every other purple card says. You put them into the trash, and that means you can tap people under their flash step interaction, such as Absolute Ice Shield, the most important one, but also Burning Force, Volcanic Break, Angelic Pressure, Exhaust Nexus, stuff like that. This card is one of the most unique effects in Battle Spirit, and again, for 3-pip reduction, it only costs 1 core. Purple is broken because our interaction costs only 1 core. Core Theft is a very, very good card. I wouldn't say it's a full reason to play purple. You do need a lot of card draw to make this very, very good. Again, purple does that very well, but it's like even the purple decks are kind of usually playing 1 or maybe just 2 of this. It's a very powerful effect, and it might even like go up here as we get more cards and more purple stuff, more card draw. More things need to be killed, like target killed at instant speed. Right now, Deadly Balance is so good because there's a lot of vanillas running around. Core Theft will go up in value when there's more cards like Derm Dyna, where like this specific attacking unit has to die. But for now, I think very good is where I'd put this, just because it's really not seeing play, and it doesn't have to see more play. It's really doing the job it needs to as just a one of. But it is a very, very good card. Next up on the list, we've got Poison Mist. This says all of your cursed spirits can attack units instead of face. You can literally pick where your cursed units go. This is a main speed effect, and it's not too expensive. It's only 2. And then it also has a flash thing where you can just give something 3k BP. These extra tack-on effects are always very relevant. Do not sleep on these when you put these cards in your deck. So this being like the main reason you put it in your deck, to have your cursed spirits attacked, that effect is actually not super good, but it does come up. And the fact that this also can give 3k BP when this first part doesn't come up when you're playing a cursed aggro deck, this is like at most a one of. It's not a very impressive card, but like the bad cards are very bad. So I think it's niche. I haven't played too much with cursed aggro. I really don't love this card, but if a cursed aggro deck played one of this, I really wouldn't hate it. So that's where that's going. Next up on the list, I believe it was Poison. Bloody Rain? Bloody Rain. Bloody Rain is the anti-aggro card. It is a burst. And this says when you lose life, your opponent cannot attack you anymore during this turn unless they remove a core from the spirit that is attacking and place it into their reserve. Now, it's a little annoying that the cores go to the reserve. If the cores went to the trash, then I would love this card a little bit more, because then I would be like, okay, you cored up all your guys for 2. Now you attack me, but at least you're paying cores to do it. But because they go to the reserve, they still have that available to use on my turn. So this card is only really doing anything if your opponent's guys have exactly 1 core where they cannot attack or else they would die. So this is very, very good against white aggro on the early turns, turn 1, turn 2. But once you get down to a low number of life, or once they start getting too many cores, it becomes a completely dead draw. Again, the flash part of this, you can gain 2,000 BP, not an irrelevant piece of text, but because of the matchup you're siding this into, which is usually white, sometimes red, but usually not. I don't think this comes in against red, and then that flash 2k BP would matter a little bit more. It does what it needs to do against white aggro. It does not do much else. This is a very niche card, but if you do bring it in against the specific matchups, it performs exceptionally well. Something to keep an eye on. Not a card I like to commit to my sideboard personally, because I think purple is already beating white aggro consistently. But yeah, if you do feel like you're struggling in that matchup, or if you just built a version of purple where you ended up cutting a lot of the cards that do perform well into white aggro, Bloody Rain will get the job done, no problem. Next up, we have Burst Venom. When your opponent destroys your spirit, you select the spirit and then you bishop it. You put it down to 1 core. And again, flash effect plus 2k BP. That is a very relevant thing. Like, that just comes up, especially in Maduke decks. Obviously, this card functions more towards the Curse Control, which are usually not playing the Maduke, or they're playing 1, maybe 2 Maduke. It kind of depends. But this card's really cool. I actually tested this a lot before Vegas, and then not much after, because it's such a neat card, and it really does exactly what you want it to do. And like, it's good. It's just like, there are 50 better purple cards that I always wanted to put in a deck, and it's always on my mind, and I'm always trying to put it in there. But yeah, it just does, because it's specifically because the burst trigger is so easy to make happen. The lose life burst triggers can be very, very awkward in some games, but when an opponent destroys your spirit, it's so easy to control. Like, if you have a spider demon out, you just go to combat, you attack with something else. They're like, why are you attacking with that? I block and your guy dies. And then you have already passed both flash steps. You go to the damage step, you burst this, their guy now has 1 core. They can't kill your spider demon before you go to attacks and remove the core from their guy. If you're playing Spider Demon, that's like one of the main reasons this card would be good. I am currently in the current meta just off Spider Demon. I prefer Mamira, so I haven't been able to revisit Burst Venom in my deck. But that's a situation when this card performs, and it was really cool. It's just like the 51st, 52nd card that you actually want to put in your deck. So I almost want to call it bad, but I've got a soft spot for this card, so we're calling it niche. I'm very confident that once set 2 comes out, this will just go into the bad tier, because if it's the 51st or 52nd card right now, it'll slide even further down the list. But because this is a set 1 tier list, we're putting it in the niche tier while I still can. Next up, we have Poison Shot. Poison Shot's cool. I think it was the player, I can't remember his name. He got top 8 at Palm Springs playing a no Burning Force, no Dragonaga Assassin purple deck. He was the only purple player to top the event, I believe, or purple control player to top the event. And he talked about this card being really cool, and it's kind of the same thing as Burst Venom. I would even say it's probably better than Burst Venom, even though Burst Venom was the one that I messed with the most. And that was because I didn't have as many pips at the time. I wasn't really high on Camelot Knight when I was testing it, but now I recognize that card's absolutely insane. Poison Shot's probably just better. Again, this is when your opponent destroys your spirit, is just an effect that happens. That happens all the time. It's going to resolve. You're going to get this free effect, and the free effect here is draw a card. And then the two cores to remove a core from a unit and place it as its own reserve is very good. But it's important to note this is also a flash effect. Like, this is something you can do for 2 mana whenever during the flash step, and that's just good. Like, this card is just good. It's just, again, doesn't really have a home right now. But I do think it's better than Burst Venom. And I hesitate to put this into the playable tier, but it's kind of the same thing as Guillotine, where it's like this card should be good, and it's situationally good, and the less decks play it, the more people won't expect it, and the better it's going to get. And I really wouldn't hate to see purple decks start to play one of this card. And of course, again, it is better than Burst Venom, so I feel if I'm defending Burst Venom into the niche tier, this has to be at least a tier above because it's just a strictly better card. But yeah, it's a real gotcha piece, and I think that card is something that's kind of slept on, but also not like game breaking. It's just like in a blind thing when an opponent sets a burst, you're not playing around that one core removal, and it just replaces itself to draw a card. Like that card is just good. It's just solid. It's just the problem is there's so many better purple cards, as I'm sure we'll see. But don't sleep on Poison Shot. Sorry for talking too long. All right, next up, we've finished all of the magic, so we're going into the spirits. We're going to sort these by rarity just to keep them kind of contained here. First up is Boa Trickster. This is just a curse unit. It just says I have curse at level 1, 2, 3. I cost 1. It's on the cheaper end. It's one of the best cursed units that you get in your deck when you start dedicating yourself to a full curse deck, because it has curse at all 3 levels. It only costs 1. This is a playable card. Next up, I didn't even look. I think we're in order. Yo, sick. All right, Magic Swordsman Dragonaga. This card has been. I've recently played the Nemesis deck that top 4'd the European event. I made a couple tweaks, but it was playing Dragonaga as kind of like something that you could play, draw a card, and then kill it with your Nemesis to draw more. And I was like, cool, this is Nemesis fodder. This card is more than just Nemesis fodder. It's unironically one of your best turn ones going first in purple. And just so like as a full disclaimer, I think that going first in Battle Spirits is nearly always correct. Even if you are the slower deck, even if you are the faster deck, no matter what you think you're doing, I think going first is better. If you look at your opening hand, you should choose to go first most of the time. I think like the only exceptions right now are if you're playing Infinity Mothership and you have it in your opening 4, then you can choose to go second. But yeah, this card has impressed me more than I thought it would. So I'm actually really high on it right now. Where am I going to put it in this tier? It's going to be playable. I think if you had asked me a week ago, I would have put it in niche tier where it's like, I don't want to use my soul core. There are more important things for your soul core to do. There's not. All the things that your soul core does in purple is say draw a card. So if this does it in one turn and says draw a card and then carry on with your day, that's good enough. This card has impressed me and may continue to impress me more. So it's a playable card. Definitely look into it for your purple decks. Let me tell you, I was massively impressed. Next up, Chain Viper. This is just a 2 cost or 4 cost, goes down to 2, dies to Burning Force at level 1, doesn't die if you have 3 cores on it. One of our more mediocre 4s. 2 reduction is cool, nothing really to write home about. The problem is there's no keywords here, and we have so many better 4 drops for purple. This is a bad card. You should not consider playing it in your purple decks. Next up is Skeleviper. Okay, 5 cost goes down to 3. Doesn't die to Burning Force. Again, just a vanilla, just a Serpent. We might see more Serpent support in the future. Right now, Serpent support is kind of just Rotting Swamp level 2. The King Snake Quetzal stuff, it's cute. It's not good. Don't really want to pay 3 cores for this. There's a lot of things we can pay 3 cores for in purple that we can do better with. So I'm not on that chord. Next up, Bone Scout. Not a very good card. It is dying to Burning Force, dying to Angelic Pressure at level 1 and level 2. You need 6 cores to beat Angelic Pressure. Don't love that. It's worse than every single free red card, but it is a purple card. And in Curse aggro, or just like any aggro purple, any Rotting Swamp deck, it's playable. So it's niche. I'm going to put the niche tier where if you're doing aggressive purple things with like a 4 Rotting Swamp. There are some like hybrid like purple-yellow Rotting Swamp 2 cost decks too, where this is seen play, and like I really don't hate it. It's worse than the other 2-drop, the Fly. I don't know if this is the common, where this is like 2, 3, 4 instead of whatever the skeleton is, where it's 1, 3, 6. It's like, yeah. And so it's strictly worse than Fly, but it's still like kind of in the same decks as Fly. It's either niche or bad. Sometimes you're playing all 8 of them. I'm going to put it in the bad tier because I want to put Fly in the niche tier. So I apologize, I've changed my mind. Next up, the Skelly Boy, Scythejaw. Dies to Burning Force, dies to Drowsy Fumes. Obviously not relevant, Drowsy Fumes. Black Jaguar, actually. If you don't know what Black Jaguar is, it's... I don't want to, like, ruin my tab here. But Black Jaguar is the white card that says put 2k or less on the bottom of your opponent's deck when summoned. That's been seeing play against purple in the sideboard, and this card dies to it, which kind of sucks. It is free. We do love free cards most of the time in Battle Spirits, but the stats on this guy, and the amount of cores to get him where he needs, and the other options for free cards where you have Bone Scout. Like, Bone Scout would go in a deck before you put it in Scythejaw, and I've already put Bone Scout in the bad tier, so I'll let you guess where this vanilla behemoth is going. Next up, we have Camelot Knight. Look at this man. Look at him. Look into his eyes. This is quite possibly the best one-cost unit in the game, one-cost spirit in the game. I know Overraptor really looking like he might be better. The Pterosaur tagline on Overraptor. But this guy's a shadow. That's relevant sometimes. Getting Curse for 1 core on a free unit is just insane. Like, it is, in my opinion, the best free card in the game. And it's not the reason we play purple, but it is a 4 of in every deck. It's a very good card. Next up, Shield Knight Gardener. And again, I'll talk about this a little bit more. Even the slower control decks, like, just free units and being able to, like, kind of reduce your pips to, like, and just throw out blockers against the aggressive stuff and then reduce pips so you can play cheaper Netherworld depths. Pips matter a lot in purple control still. You know, Bishop and Curse Dragon need pips on board. You don't really want those pips to be on dudes. You want them to be on Nexuses, but, like, having him as a blocker, something you can throw away, something to just play for free, having Curse when he attacks, there's just so much this card does. It should be at least a 3 of, and I would even, like, I would bash your head into the wall and say you must play at least 3 Camelot Knight in nearly every deck, and then I would even argue 4, but I'll let you get away with 3 some of the time. Just, if you haven't put Camelot Knight in your purple decks, you really need to, because it just smooths things over so well. So next up, Shield Knight Gardener. Shadow, love that. Love Shadow. At level 2 or higher, you refresh this when your purple spirits are destroyed during your opponent's attack step. The problem is he's so tiny that the only way he's going to be exhausted during your opponent's attack step is if he got through with an attack or a block, in which case refreshing him would let him block again, but he's probably just dying most of the time. Like, 3k is not an impressive stat line. Shadow is cool. Again, if we play Guillotine, it looks a little nice, but I don't think we're at a place right now where Guillotine's looking any kind of good. I don't think the Shadow archetype is very good, but this is a keyword I'm keeping an eye on for later. The Night Imp, the Devilish Prankster, is another reason we care about Shadows, and that's, like, actually the main reason, but this isn't really doing things I care about there either. It needs 3 cores to be level 2 before it even gets this ability. Is it niche? I don't think it's niche. Even the Shadow decks that I've seen and messed around with have not put in this card, so it's a bad card for now. Again, Shadow keyword could change it in the future, but for now. We've got stuff like Aglavale. This is a Shadow. This says draw a card. God, we love drawing cards in purple if you don't know. It's also got Curse at level 2. Stat line not impressive. Stat lines don't matter when you've got Curse, and if you die, you draw a card. It's got 2 pips. This card costs 1 core to play most of the time. It's a great turn 1. I would argue the second best turn 1 behind exactly this Swordsman, which has just been, again, overperforming for me recently. So yeah, Aglavale, this is just a very good card. It's not why we're purple, but once we're in purple, we're like, hey man, how many Aglavale am I allowed to put in my deck? Because, again, cheap units, the same way as with Camelot Knight, smooth out your curve, you throw it out, you let it block, you draw a card, it just replaces itself, you don't take damage. We love all of that. Aglavale just an absolute MVP in most purple decks. Whether you're Curse aggro or core control, you're usually playing between 1 and 4 Aglavale. So next up, Werewolf Commando. Shadow, cool. 3 cost goes down to 1, cool. 2, 5, 8 with 1, 3, 7 cores. 3 cores, 5k for a 1-drop is not bad. However, the Shadow aggro deck has so many good shadows that, like, this vanilla is not really where you're at. And again, like, if you really want to be playing, like, 1 cost vanillas that are good, this card actually kind of overperforms it, where it's, like, beating Burning Force at 2 cores, which is really the threshold that you're looking for vanillas to beat. So unfortunately, Werewolf Commando is in the bad tier currently. but that could change in the future. Again, that Shadow tag, not great yet, but will get better. Cavalier Shadow. When summoned, draw a card. What more do you want from cards in Battle Spirits than drawing more cards? This card is the premier Beldegor activator. You are putting Beldegor into the field every time this guy dies, and you've drawn a card already. When you played him, he's just generating you advantage incrementally and helping you run away with the game. Just a phenomenal card. This was something I was kind of like. This is the breaking point for purple, where you decide if you're going to play around Starblast Draw or not. And when you decide that you're not, 4 Cavalier immediately go into your deck. And usually, if you're playing purple and not trying to beat Starblast Draw, you're still playing some number of Beldegor, and then it's like, well, why am I even trying to beat Starblast Draw if I'm playing Beldegor? I just need to put because Beldegor keeps coming back, so you put in Cavalier because he's coming back anyway. Cavalier's so good. Part of that is because of Beldegor, but it's also just like a fine card on its own. Again, the same reason I put like this card goes in the Swordsman goes in the playable tier because he costs 3. Cavalier goes in the very good tier because he costs 4, and Beldegor exists. And I don't know why I didn't put Beldegor like earlier on. I'm doing it by rarity, so. But you guys know what Beldegor does, I hope. If not, skip ahead. I'll put a timestamp or something. Next up, Devilish Prankster Imp. This is the best shadow payoff we currently have, I think. Maybe there'll be something else that lets me change my mind. But it says, when one of your shadows deals damage to your opponent, you remove a core from that. You get to remove a core from one of your opponent's spirits and put it into their reserve. So your opponent is now incentivized to block your shadows. What shadows do we care about our opponent blocking? Well, Beldegor wants to go to the graveyard as a shadow. Cavalier, when he dies, gets back a Beldegor. So if you're blocking my shadows and killing them, I'm getting stuff out of that. And if you're not blocking my shadows, now I'm getting stuff. It's also a very cheap unit. This is a card where, like, the times where removing one core from things is relevant are on the faster decks where they're going wider usually, like white aggro, like pterosaurs, that kind of stuff, even yellow to some extent. So getting this guy down early, he's got very mediocre stats, but he will block and trade with a lot of white aggro stuff early on. And if he doesn't need to block and trade, you can now set up like situations where your shadows are attacking and now your opponent has to block your shadows or their guys are dying anyway. This is something that gets a lot of value. If you are trying to beat aggro, this is a very good card. A lot of the shadows in purple are very good, and that's a situation where the guillotine gets better too, because now your shadows are bigger. Your opponent is incentivized to block them, but also doesn't want to block them because they're bigger on your turn because of the guillotine. But you don't even need to get that cute. Like, this card is just good against the aggro stuff because it lets you attack but also kill things, where normally the only way you're killing your opponent's stuff is by blocking. You're not able to actually chip in damage, which can make games go longer than they need to. You can give white aggro time to draw Derm Dyna and then just kill you from, no matter how many blockers you have. So that's where Imp is very useful. I think it's a great sideboard card in aggressive metas. I would put it in the very playable tier. It's not like super good. Even now in an aggressive meta, I'm still putting Imp in and out of my sideboard, but like he does, like if he's a reason to play shadows, and he's definitely relevant, and he's something you should definitely keep in your mind. Next up, Illusiona. This is a vanilla 1 cost that gets up to a 4K. A 2-core 4K, very solid stats. Typing is Spirit Beast. No idea what that is. Not a shadow, so don't love that. It's not bad though. Like 1 cost 4K is like, I'm putting some really bad cards in the niche tier. Maybe this is like the bad tier and this is the unplayable tier. That might be a better way to describe these, but I like Dark Matter is not a bad card, it's just niche. Like the Bloody Rain's not a bad card, it's just niche. So this is like the bad / niche tier, and this is the unplayable tier, but Illusiona is like 1 cost 4K, like in the aggressive Rotting Swamp stuff. This card's cool. Demo Bones. Free guy. He's no Camelot Knight. That's the problem, man. Demo Bones, I would probably play 4 Demo Bones if Camelot Knight didn't exist, just because that curve smoothing, having that free guy is really cool. But unfortunately, Camelot Knight does exist, so Demo Bones gets a bad rap just being not as good as Camelot Knight. Dies to Burning Force no matter how many cores you put on him, and so does Camelot Knight, but Camelot Knight has Curse. So Demo Bones is cool, but he's just a little niche. He's good in like the aggro stuff where you're doing 4 swamp and you're not on curse stuff, but it's just, yeah, he's Because every purple deck starts with 3 or 4 Camelot Knight. Demo Bones is like, do you want 5 Camelot Knight? Sometimes you do, but where did I put? Where did I put the skeleton guy? He's in the bad tier. Yeah, Demo Bones is better than the skeleton guy. Okay, good. Mummy Fant. 4 cost, 3 pips, 3k, dies to Burning Force level 1, 5k with 3 cores. 3 cores is kind of hard to hit, but not super hard. This has the same stat line on 1 and 3 as Black Lance, which I've been playing a lot of recently. And yeah, you can get to 5k pretty easily. This card saw 4 copies of it in the top 8 of the Chile event recently, and it's the cheapest Beldegor activator that purple has. That's what this card is doing. So there's, obviously I'm not on the right screen for that, but there's no other 4 cost or 5 cost that has as many pips as Mummy Fant. So even if you're getting in situations where it's being killed by the 3k removal spells, as long as it's happening in combat, this is like the cheapest thing you could have done to turn back on Beldegor. And like, that's not the most impressive thing to be saying, but like, it is decent, and again, it did top 8 in Chile with 4 Mummy Fant just for that exact reason. It's cheap and it brings back Beldegor. So this card actually goes all the way up to the playable tier. Is it a niche card? Where do you put Beldegor Activator? If we're saying this is the bad/niche tier, this is like a playable card. It's in the mid-range type decks. It's a playable card. I don't know. I have no idea where to put this. You can tell me where you think. I would love for you to tell me where you think Mummy Fant goes in the comments, because I was very impressed by. I'm being more and more impressed by high tempo cards as the format evolves and as it gets faster. And I was also just impressed with the top 8 list there. I'm actually putting it in playable because I've been thinking about like 1x Mummy Fant in some of my like even slower core control lists. Yeah, I don't. It's niche. It's niche. Only certain decks are going to play any of it, but it's like, don't sleep on it. It's not like Poison Mist niche, but it is niche. So sorry for making this as complicated as possible, but it's like, don't sleep on Mummy, man. Okapandel is your 4 cost curse guy. This is your Beldegor activator in the curse decks. That's what we care about. This is a playable card because in the curse aggro decks, which are decent, if you're struggling with white as a purple deck, just switch to curse aggro, and curse cards play very well into white. But yeah, this is like, Boa's your standard 3-drop because he costs 1, and then Okapandel's your 4-drop because he triggers Beldegor, costs 2, always has curse. That's what the card is doing. It doesn't go in any deck besides like 3+ Maduke decks. But he's good. He's cool. Dark Knight Florence. What does this card even do? Costs 2, gives curse. Not your premium curse unit. I don't love it. It's cheap. Costs 1 total, which is less than the Okapandel. It's a shadow, which doesn't really matter when it has curse. It does matter when it has curse. Again, shadow is a keyword I'm keeping an eye on, but I'm not in love with this card. I don't even know if I played it in my curse aggro lists. I think it's niche. Maybe it's better because it's curse, but I like Mummy Fant more than this card, and I'm not putting Mummy Fant in playable tier. That card doesn't go in playable tier. Skullfly, next up. This is the better 2-drop free guy for purple. If you're playing non-curse aggro, just like Rotting Swamp decks, and you're just hitting your opponent and trying to draw cards, Skullfly is the better 2-drop free guy. Better than Demo Bones, better than Bone Scout. This is a playable card. Not great. It's very upsetting seeing Bone Scout next to like... No, these are all playable. Yeah, that's good. I should have done this beforehand. What am I doing? Phasmobat. At level 2, so if you have at least 3 cores on it, you draw a card if your opponent has a spirit with only 1 core on it. This is the strictly worst version of Dragonaga Assassin, because for 3 cores on this guy, you get a 3k that draws a card if your opponent has a spirit. And Dragonaga Assassin does the same thing with 3 cores, but your opponent doesn't need to have a guy with 1 core, and it's bigger. This is a bad card. It should never go in your deck unless you're like on 4 Burst Venom or something. Even then, I don't think it's any good. All right, next up. Oh, it's all of them because this is a promo card. This card's good. Playable. Playable is a tier I would put it in if we had one. But yeah, that's not where we're at. So we're moving on from the common cards to the uncommon cards. We're going to keep things moving. I'm probably taking way too long with this already. We're up to Bython. Draw a card. We love cards that say draw a card. It says if it has a soul card on it, and it says when it attacks. So this is worse than Dragonaga Assassin because it's doing the same thing, but it does it with less cores. Rotting Swamp decks like this card, where again it's more like the, I don't know, but the Rotting Swamp, like 4 Rotting Swamp like Skullfly decks are kind of more white aggro-ish, more Pterosaur, Unga Bunga. This like helps you refuel, but because it costs 2 cores, you can't go as wide when you're doing it. It's like almost always dying when it attacks. You're just trying to like draw your card and then dip. You don't really want to put this over like an Aglavale or a Assassin. Those are like the 2 cards in this specific like slot that compete with it, where it's like costing 2 cards. Where do I put this? Is it niche or is it bad? I think it's bad. But if you found something with this card, I wouldn't hate it. Like I don't hate this card. I just can't see myself playing I can't see myself putting 4 Dragonaga Assassin in a list, putting 4 Dark Knight Aglavale, and then saying, yep, I still need Bython. Like those, I would be at 4 copies of both of those cards before I ever considered this card. And I don't know if I'd like continue like with 8 copies of those cards already in my deck, putting this in there. This isn't something I've played, so I haven't done my due diligence here, but I just can't. I think that's the reason why. It's like, where do you actually get this in there? So interesting. Dark Knight Palamedes. This is one of the guillotine payoffs where you really want your opponent to attack you, and then you also get to like hit their guy with like a 6k because of guillotine's level 2. Then it's like dealing 6. It's got the +2 from guillotine. I'm talking about guillotine a lot for a card that's not very good. This card's like neat. It does stuff. It's just costs 3, needs 2 cores, and is like kind of small, really, when it's trying to win things in combat. Again, guillotine is like the reason you play this card, or like the reason you would play this card, but it's a niche card for now. Again, shadow keyword, keep an eye. Next up, Phantasm Archking Zenith has Curse, love that. Level 2, which is 4 cores. All of your opponent's spirits cannot, all of your cursed spirits cannot be blocked by opponent's level 1. This is cool. It's doing what Smoke Valley does, but slightly better, where Smoke Valley, your opponent's things with 1 core cannot block curse units. This has your opponent's level 1. So if your opponent's like putting 2 cores on stuff to beat exactly Curse Dragon, but they're not actually leveling up, this is better. But it also costs 4 cores. It's got 4 pips, and the Curse aggro decks do love pips. So I think this is neat, but because Smoke Valley is doing what it does better, and it costs so much, it's a bad card. Spider Demon. God, I love Spider Demon. I don't, but I mean, I love it. I'm not playing it, but I love it. When it attacks, you just remove a core from something straight up. This is one of the reasons to go second is you just like have a Spider Demon in your hand, and you want your opponent to play a unit. If they play a Nexus, you're kind of tight about it, but it's like this and Mamira are like super, super good, and this one's like slightly better. I just don't think it's well positioned in the current aggressive Pterosaur mid-range white, mid-range purple, yellow meta, because the decks that put 1 core on things and then don't attack me. Sorry, the decks that leave 1 core on things are the decks that I don't want to attack. It's the ones that are going wide specifically. So having to attack to get the soul core trigger, to get the remove 1 core, can be a huge detriment against Pterosaurs and white aggro specifically. And that's why I'm higher on Mamira for like this type of, I need to kill remove 1 core from a standing thing slot. But it's still a phenomenal card. It's still very good. Even though I'm not like high on it right now, and I think there's cards doing the same thing but better, it's still very good, and I'm not surprised or upset to see people playing 3 to 4 copies of this card. It's a very good card. Yeah, if you play 4, I don't hate it. It's just good. Just not for me presently. Next up, Segro Snake. If there's a soul core on this spirit during your attack step, it cannot be blocked by things with 1 core. And it costs 3 with 1 pip reduction, and its stats are terrible. So you can get in damage if your opponent has stuff with 1 core. Again, the ways we get our opponents down to 1 core is like the guillotine, if we play Bishop, if we play Burst Venom. The things that are, again, same thing with Spider Demon. The decks that are going wide and leaving only 1 core on their guys are the decks that are hitting me. And the decks that are hitting me do not care about unblockable. And this card always costs at least 2 cores because it's 3 with 1 pip. It is a bad card. I'm sorry, Sugar Snake. Next up, Stray Soul. This card's kind of cool. No relevant typing. It's a Darkling. 3 with 1 pip. Select one of your opponent's exhausted spirits when you summon it. Remove a core and place it in the reserve. So this is like not as good as Mimira because the spirit needs to be exhausted, but it's kind of like an extra Beldegor, but only if they leave 1 core on it. But usually, like, if they're attacking you and expecting to get Beldegor, they're kind of like leaving 1 core because I think it's going to die anyway. So it's got some redundancy with your Beldegor, with your core drain stuff, where it's like the things that attack you just end up with 1 core often anyway. But it's a little bit weird. It's just like the stats are irrelevant. It's always costs at least 2, which matters in those early games. You would love for this to have 2 pip reduction to be better, but it's not like unplayable. I'm going to put the niche here because it's like it does stuff. Again, you're not playing, like, it's a when summoned ability, but you're not beating Starblast in purple anyway. So, all right, on to some rare cards. King Snake Quetzalcoatl. When summoned, you get back something with Curse or Blood Curse. So that's your Maduke, that's your Black Lance, that's your Dragonaga Assassin, that's your Aglavales. Those are like your premium targets. It's a Beldegor activator because it costs 5. It's 5 minus 2 is the cost, so 3 cores at least to play it is a little bit hefty, I would say. It's kind of competing with Mordred in the slot, and I do think Mordred is just a better card. This also has a level 2 where it says you pick one of your opponent's spirits that has 1 core on it and just straight up kill it. So that beats like Fola exactly, where instead of like removing the 1 core from something that has 1 core, you just kill it outright. This is going to be a non-bow with your Smoke Valley, because instead of just removing the core to kill the thing, you're just killing it with the effect, so you're not getting the Smoke Valley draw. I'm like mostly unimpressed with this card, but like because of exactly Black Lance being a serpent and having Curse, I'm kind of liking this a little bit more. It's in the niche tier, and because it activates Beldegor, it's kind of doing that stuff for me. It doesn't get back Camelot Knight because Camelot Knight doesn't have Curse. It's like a weird conditional curse where it needs the Soul Core, so that's something to keep in mind. But it's like it's fringe, it's chill, it's doing stuff, but it's not very good yet. But it could be better. Next up, Pandemonium, the Dark Seven World. How do I not put this card in the unplayable tier? All right, level 1, after you've paid at least 5 cores up to 8, you can kill one of your opponent's exhausted spirits. So if they just straight up volcanic break it during their own main step, you get no value. But if you can get up to 2 cores, you can select an opponent's refresh spirit and remove 3 cores. So like you pay 5 cores if you have 3 pips, which is as much as you would pay for a Curse Dragon. That's what this is competing with, keep in mind. You can core it twice to get an exhausted spirit dead and a refreshed spirit dead, and it's still always dying to volcanic break, but not much other removal. That's kind of the one thing we care about, is the volcanic break threshold. So like that's cute. Killing 2 things maybe for 5 cores. It's just, it feels a little bit too easy to play around. And the level 6 is like probably not great most of the time, but I can see it being very good some of the time. I've really tried to put this card in a deck. I promise you I have. With like the Rotting Swamp, getting back Serpents, doing some weird loop stuff with this. I've tried. I literally never cast it. I've tried to put it in decks and I just have not been able to cast it. Is it a bad card or is it? I think it's bad. I've tried to argue my way out of it, but we knew where we're coming. Dark Bishop Baculus. See, this is an interesting card because I'm torn between putting this in like the very good tier or like the reason we play purple, because like Cursed Dragon is the reason we play purple, but we wouldn't play, like, Cursed Dragon wouldn't be in that tier if we weren't playing Bishop. So I think like Bishop combo goes in the reason to play purple. Bishop is a 6 cost 2 pip reduction spirit that says when it's summoned, remove all but 1 core from all spirits and place them into the owner's reserves. Something to note here is that it is 1 core from all spirits, so you level your own board down to 1 when you summon it, which means you're very, very vulnerable to Burst Speed Exhaust Nexus, which can make the yellow matchup a little bit weird and like annoying, but I think purple's still just better card quality overall, so it's still like winning, but it's just like the most annoying thing that they can do to us for sure. But yeah, It's just set up half the combo to wipe your opponent's board and then hit them for 2. Forces Ice Shield most of the time because of that. Just very good. That's what purple's doing. This is why we're here. This is why we're purple. Dark Bishop doing the Curse Dragon combo stuff. And also just like setting up like the Smoke Valley level 2 where you're, making everything 1 core and then your curse guys are unblockable. That's just like really cool. So that's like the neat, but not the reason we play it. But the fact that it has additional upside besides just being a combo piece is great. Beldegor, we've been here. We know where this is going. This is one of the reasons to play purple. This is a purple card you play in non-purple decks and probably the most played purple card in non-purple decks. It kills things when summoned, and it comes back. It's just a value engine. It's great removal. It's cheap as hell. It's just an insane card. Don't need to say much more about it. Mordred, one of the cooler, like, exhausted removal spells. The when summon's really cool, and then the when this attacks kill things. Just, like, very neat card. If you've played purple at all, you know this is a decent card. This is doing very similar things to Spider Demon. It's in that Beldegor threshold. It's just a very good card. Not something you'd really play outside of purple, but, like, with all the other tools that purple has, you're cool paying 3 cores to make this do stuff. Next up, Dragonaga Assassin. This is a cool card. 4K, beats Burning Force with only 3 cores. It just, like, hits your opponent, draws cards, needs to be answered by your opponent as soon as possible because it will keep drawing cards if they don't answer it. And it has Curse. So if they want to kill it by blocking it, you just trade their guys. Just a phenomenal card. Again, it has, like, kind of like Spider Demon, it has some weaknesses where, like, you don't always want to attack certain decks. But what I like about Assassin and I don't like about Spider Demon is Assassin wants to attack against the slower decks, and it'll draw me cards there. Spider Demon against the slower decks, they'll put more than 1 core on their thing, on their things, and then Spider Demon doesn't get any value, where it's not able to kill anything, even if it does attack, where Dragonaga Assassin just always gets value in those slower matchups. It's probably your 3rd best turn 1 behind the Magic Swordsman and then Aglavale. If you're not playing Swordsman, which I wouldn't blame you if you're not, like, Assassin becomes like one of your like your 2nd best turn 1 behind Aglavale, right? Maybe even your best turn 1 outside of like the Nexuses. So like Assassin's just a really, really neat card. Very, very good. If you've I will talk a little bit because I think the top 16 list from Palm Springs didn't play any. There is some argument, again, to like the not wanting to attack against the more aggressive matchups. But I think because like we're playing Netherworld Depths, a lot of purple mid-game situations can quickly come down to, even against aggressive matchups, can quickly come down to just Ice Shield passes back and forth. It's like, how many Ice Shields do I have? How many Ice Shields do you have? When you can attack with Assassin and they're like not incentivized to block you, and you can draw a couple cards out of it, but also like, you'll end up in situations where you're just never feasibly blocking an opponent out. You're always going to be casting Ice Shield on their attack turn based on like how many guys they have, how many blockers you can throw out, whatever. Like when you're committed to having an Ice Shield turn, having an Assassin to attack with is going to like maybe deal 1 damage, maybe trade a guy, but it's going to draw a card to dig you towards your next Ice Shield. And that kind of proactive draw means a lot to me in those mid-game situations. So even against the Pterosaurs, even against the white aggros, like Assassin's not a bad card. Where the Earth Spider Demon is completely useless against the slower matchups. So that's where I stand on Assassin. I'm a big proponent of at least 2 of this. Like 2 is the absolute minimum I'd want to main. 3 is like more comfortable, and I even like 4 in the slower decks. So that's where I'm on Assassin. Mamira is the counterpoint to Spider Demon, where you're removing a core on summon instead of every time you attack. It costs more, it's smaller, it's a worse card overall in a vacuum, but because of the aggressive nature of the meta, where you don't want to attack the decks that are going wide, Mamira gets a lot of value there. So that's why I'm higher on Mamira right now than the Spider Demon, but in terms of the tier list, it's just I'm going to put it in the very good tier. If you would ask me, at the beginning of the game, I would have said Spider Demon is obviously better than Mamira, but in this aggro meta, it's the same card, if not better. So very good for Mamira. And then finally, the X-Rares, Maduke. This is the Curse aggro card. This is an absolute bomb. What have I done? You're niche. This is an absolute bomb. Just reasonably purple. Yeah, like if you're playing Curse aggro, like Maduke is the top end that's like hosing the decks that get bigger than you, putting stuff into the void. Just Maduke is seeing play in like non-curse decks because by itself Maduke is like it's effectively like an elephant. You know what I mean? Like I would put elephant in the reasons to play white tier. Maduke is the purple elephant, where it's this creature that you cannot kill. You cannot put me in situations where you're going to kill this card because you will just lose the game almost on the spot. Maduke is just that girl. Next up, Curse Dragon. I don't even think I clicked on Maduke, but if you don't know what Maduke does, apologies. All of your curse units hit your opponent's life to the void instead of the reserve. At level 3, she has Blood Curse. Oh, she doesn't even do it herself, level 1. Never thought about that. I think I did, but I forgot. Blood Curse says if she would die, instead of dying, you can remove a core from her and a core from your opponent's life. Put those cores into their owner's trashes to keep it alive. And then it keeps it alive refreshed, not exhausted. So it can block infinitely if you have enough cores and your opponent's guys are too big. Very good into Turbo Rex. And then at 6 cores, all of your curse spirits gain Blood Curse, so they get that I can't die effect. Very, very good card. Next up, Curse Dragon. Curse Dragon says when summoned, remove 1 core from all spirits, place them into the void, or place them in the reserve. That card's cool. Wiping your opponent's board, very cool. The ramp effect on this card cannot be understated. Getting cores from the void for each guy you killed and putting them on the thing, that's just like backbreaking in so many matchups. As if wiping the board wasn't backbreaking enough. And then this in combo with Bishop, it's just the reason to be purple. Bishop combo, reason to be purple. Beldegor, reason to be purple. Like maybe Deadly Bounce is a little bit controversial, but I think it's like so good as the most efficient removal spell. I'm going to keep it here until I change my own mind. But feel free to leave a comment thinking, what do you think about that? Dread Knight Nemesis. This card's weird, man. I played the Nemesis deck in a store championship because I was like, I don't love this card, but I'm willing to give it a try. And I hated it so much. I literally like would draw multiple of this card and then never cast it. It just felt so medium or bad. Like even when my deck was designed to facilitate this card, I still didn't love it. It costs at least 4 cores. It's 7 down to 4. It's big. I do like that it's 6k, but that level 1 threshold is not meeting some of the requirements I want. And then level 3, it's getting an extra effect. It's able to clean up Vords very well, which is cool. It's just like, why isn't this just a Mordred most of the time? Or it's like, or a Black Lance. The thing is, like, before this card where it's like remove 2 cores from something, Mordred is doing that. But draw 2 cards, okay, you've got my attention. You know, you attack, you kill off some cheap little guy, you kill off a Beldegor, you kill off one of your 4 costs to get a Beldegor back from grave. You're triggering your Wadding Swamp. You're doing a lot of cool things by killing your own spear at level 1. And then, of course, at level 2, you can kill something, or even kill, like, the Nemesis itself, and then kill an extra spirit. A lot of cool things going on. But the first part of this one attack's ability is doing what Mordred does. And the second part of this attack's ability is doing what Black Lance does. And if I can do those things in my deck without having to kill my own guys, and again, killing your own guys can be an upside, but, like, I really didn't love this card when I played it. I was very surprised by how medium it felt when the deck was built around it. It's a niche card for me. I really expected it to be in the playable tier, but I'm just so unimpressed. I think once we get the 0-cost card from the expansion set, it might be a little bit better, but I just really didn't love what this card was doing. Next up, Pentacles. Pentacles is cool. Again, same cost as Nemesis, and then when summoned, you're stripping something down to 1, so it's a little mini Bishop effect, and we've already talked about the extra upsides of Bishop besides just the Curse Dragon. But when it attacks, you're also taking a core and putting it in the trash, which is like medium on its own. You're just killing things with 1 core, but once you've already got Pentacles out, your opponent's not leaving stuff at 1 core anymore. But putting things in the trash matters because, you know, that affects what they're able to play at flash speed, stuff like that. It's a fine card. It's like, this card's good. It's just the problem is when you're looking at building your deck and you're looking at putting things in that are expensive, you are playing 4 Netherworld Depths. That's not optional. Some decks play 2, I guess. I don't think that's ever correct, but I would never put a Pentacles in my deck over a 4th Netherworld Depths. I would never put a Nemesis in my deck over a 4th Netherworld Depths. And then when I started saying, okay, well, I've already got 4 Netherworld Depths, that's my expensive stuff. What's the next expensive stuff I'm putting in? Am I putting in the Pentacles, or am I putting in up to 4 Curse Dragon? My answer every time is 4 Curse Dragon. And then if I'm playing 4 Curse Dragon, Bishop also costs 4. Like, the minimum he'll ever cost us 4. The minimum Pendacles will ever cost us 4. Like, these are expensive cards. When you start putting in too many, they can really clunk up your hand. And there's never situations where I'm putting Pendacles, like, not even one Pendacles or, like, Nemesis is weird because, like, he builds decks differently than Curse Dragon. You're maybe not playing Curse Dragon in Nemesis-type decks. But, like, Pendacles is never going in a deck that doesn't already have 4 Curse Dragon, 2 to 3 Bishop, or, like, 3 Curse Dragon, 2 to 3 Bishop. And then it's like, do I want to add the 1 Pendacles, or do I want to add the 4th Curse Dragon? It's just always 4th Curse Dragon. That card is too good to, like, want this extra expensive stuff. And then even once you have, like, 4 Curse Dragon, 3 Bishop, are you putting in the 4th Bishop? Are you putting in the first Pendacles? No, you're putting in the first Maduke. Like, like, these expensive cards that you're putting in your deck, like, they're just taken up in the slot by Curse Dragon and Maduke. So, like, Nemesis is cool, and I didn't love him when I played him, and that's why he's an niche tier. And then Pendacles is, like, actually a good card, but he's just not Curse Dragon, and he's not Maduke. So he unfortunately goes in the niche tier because he's just not. Like, there are situations definitely that will come up where he's better than those cards, and you'll be like, man, I'm really glad to play this card. But most of the time, from a deck building perspective, you should just be putting in the extra copies of those premium units instead of the Pendacles. And then finally, we've got Black Lance. Black Lance is a very good card. Black Lance is very good. Can I put this card in the reason to play purple? I've been so impressed with this card. The Nemesis deck that I played, like, was 4 Nemesis, 3 Black Lance, and I was like, wow, I want to play 0 Nemesis, and I want to play 4 Black Lance. Like, this was, like, again, this was like, I can attack and kill my own guy and draw 2 cards, or I can pay 2 cores. This costs 6, but it's got 4 pips, 2 cores, and then you have to make it level 2. We'll talk about that in a second. But for 2 cores, you are drawing 2 cards, and then putting a Curse guy on board. A Curse guy that's 3K. And then, again, so you have to make them level 2 to get that 1 summoned effect, but then you can, like, move those cores. Like, you can pay 1, play Aglavale. You can just keep them on the unit. You can usually spend them in the purple deck, especially when you're lower to the ground, playing Camelot Knights, playing Assassins, Beldegors, stuff like that. Like, it's very trivial to actually pay this cost, I've come to find, and I'm just in love with this card. I think it's insane in Curse aggro. I think it's, like, playable 1 to 2 of, even in the Curse Dragon decks. I just really have been high on this card. I think it's very, very good. And then finally, we've got Crimson Mail. This video's probably been an hour. It's excellent. Crimson Mail says, kill one of your own guys, remove a core from your opponent's guy. Honestly, if this guy had an extra pip, I might love him more. Shadow typing's kind of cute. Again, something that might come up in the future, but not really something we care about right now. With Nemesis, like, attacking and killing my guys not being something I wanted to do very often, this being a when summoned to kill my own guys, to just remove 1 core, he's not doing it for me. He is a bad card. All right, and without taking up any more of your time, this is my tier list. I would absolutely love to know what you think about any card in the comments. I love talking about purple. I love talking about Battle Spirits, and I'm very open to being wrong because I, again, did this on the fly live. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the video, and have a great, wonderful day.